I want to thank everybody for being here. First, thank yourselves for being here. So my name is Sarah Zarling. I am a community organizer, and I've been helping the Beaver Dam Education on Data Center group rally the troops, if you will, to try and engage the community and educate the community on the metadata center project that's been happening here. We have our wonderful panel of speakers here. I appreciate everybody for taking the time out of your day to be here and taking the time to prepare your presentations to educate the crowd. The information that we're going to share with you tonight, friends, is really important. And the goal of being here is we want to make sure that you leave feeling educated and empowered and ready to move forward, because what we're doing here is a long time coming. It really should have happened like a year ago, or at least, yeah. Yeah, I'm sort of viewing this as like your redemption day, because as soon as I learned about this project last September, months after ground had already been broken on the site, I was really disturbed to learn that the community at large did not know what was happening in their literal backyard. And it's been frustrating for me to hear in Common Council meetings and in exchanges with the city officials and the mayor that they believe that people are informed about this. But starting with our community meetings in October, for whoever was at that first meeting at the Pizza Ranch, when Steve asked the question, how many of you knew about the data center before this meeting? One hand went up, and that was the hand of a reporter. Seriously. So I think that, I feel like it's fair to acknowledge there's been so many discussions about so many different things that have come up about this issue over the last several months, basically since Joe started the group in October. And one of the discussions is it's about transparency, and then also about like resident responsibility. So, it's really unfortunate that the system is working exactly as it was designed, and that people are working 2 and 3 jobs to try and support their families and just trying to pay their bills, and so they're too busy and distracted by other things to attend, their city government meetings. And that's totally understandable, because I'm a single mom. Life is hard. And, we don't always find the time to look at agendas and stay engaged. And we put the trust and faith in our city leaders that they're going to do the right thing and represent us like they're supposed to. And so when that doesn't happen, then we feel betrayed and we feel upset. And the city leaders turn around and they say, well, you should be engaged. And so we've heard some talks from the city leaders that, you should have been aware, we put out agendas, whatever, about this project. However, I really feel very strongly that if we have multiple community meetings where we ask the question every time, how many of you knew about this data center before this meeting, and no hands go up, I think that's a really strong indicator that whatever's being done to inform the residents of things like this, it's clearly not enough. And also, I think it really highlights the issue of, again, I mentioned transparency, but it's just, I feel like it's 2 + 2 = 4. Like, this should have gone to community vote. I mean, it really should have. You guys should have had a citizen discussion about this project before it was ever voted on. I really do feel to my core that what's happened here is very wrong. I do feel like you were deliberately left in the dark, and we know that you were, because there were NDAs, right? Like, there was deliberate secrecy that happened around the approval of this project. And so I just feel really strongly like, as much as the city leaders want to dismiss or justify what they've done, they have betrayed you. They really, truly have. And from the bottom of my heart, honestly, I'm sorry for you, because I live in Watertown. I don't live in Beaver Dam, so you might wonder why this chick from Watertown is up here talking about a Beaver Dam issue. It's because I've been helping as a professional organizer, but the people in the group, the other admins, and everybody who helped to plan this event, because, oh my gosh, does it truly take a village. Watching them grow over these past months and really come into their power and not be, like, they were never afraid to stand up for what they believe in, but like the fire under their rear end is like really grown, and it's really exciting to see. And so we're honestly hoping that this is going to be just the first of these kind of events, and that with all the information and discussion that you get here today, that you're going to leave wanting to feel empowered and stay engaged and fight back. Because remember, you do have a second proposal coming up for a vote, right? Yeah. Well, the city council is going to be voting on it. Again, it should come to community vote, right? Yeah. So friends, what needs to happen here is a lot of rallying and coming together, and a switch to flip in here to make you want to leave this room not wanting to stop, not wanting to give up, not wanting to let them just get away with this. Yeah, things start at the top. So clearly, if the system is not working, if what's happening isn't working, then we need to change it. So, feeling empowered to start being more involved and using your voice. Like, remember, a lot of people think, I'm one person, my voice doesn't matter, or the ground has been broken, there's nothing I can do. I know that you feel that way, and I'm sorry that you feel that way. But just please remember, friends, that as long as you have a beating heart in your chest and air in your lungs, you have a voice, and you should use it, and it matters. So don't underestimate your power. And then I do want to just go ahead and do that fun little visual exercise that we've done at some of our community meetings. So I'm just going to throw a dart and pick a date. So Beaver Dam residents only. How many of you knew about the data center project before December? Okay, good. Did you start coming to our community meetings? Or find out on Facebook? Still not a lot of hands. I mean, really, lots of hands should come up, right? So I think it's just really important to, again, like I said, let's leave here feeling empowered to stand up and make sure that this doesn't keep happening to you. So I did want to bring up all of the admins and the people in the planning committee to acknowledge them, but they've requested I not do that. So I do want to just take the moment to acknowledge how much work and effort was put into not only organizing this event, but over the past several months of finding places to hold our meetings, people donating money out of their pocket for signs and space costs and printing and so many things. I mean, they've literally given their blood, sweat, tears, and heart to make sure that you're educated and that you can stay rallied and remember the word community has the word unity in it. So it's really important that you guys really unite together. But they really have been so tireless, and again, doing this for free because they care that much. So please. So I do have something really fun, a couple fun things that I want to introduce whenever it's time for the presenters, but I would like to bring up the woman who is most responsible for this event occurring right now. I like to call her the big kahuna, but because I'm weird. But her name is Jo Larson. I'd like to just have her say a few words about how this whole thing came to be, because it really does matter. So.
Well, I asked a question. I wanted to know why.
That's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know why we weren't informed. I wanted to know why it was in secrecy. I'm a midwife. I wanted to know what it was going to do to affect the families that I take care of. That was very important to me. What's it going to do to the water? What's it going to do to the supply? What's it going to do to our future, right? And we have generations coming up behind us, and those generations have to take care of this problem. So this has become like an epidemic. We need to look at this as a sickness that needs to be stopped, and we need to get fire behind us and start lighting that fire to everyone we talk to. So I just started it. I thank you all, my team. Let's give a round of my team. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing it grow and helping other areas too. So.
All right. Well, there is more I wanted to say, but to be honest with you, my head is just really kind of swimming right now, and the squirrels are running everywhere. So, and we got to keep her moving anyway because we started late. So, I'm guessing that I'm just going to go ahead and say that it's time for the big moment here. So, the first time that I learned who Charlie was, I saw a video come across my feed called Midwest Guy at Disney. Yeah, Charlie. And I thought it was just the funniest thing, and I watched it repeatedly, and I told everybody I could, oh my God, you gotta see this guy. And of course, a lot of people already knew who he was, so I wasn't very cool apparently then, but better late than never. And I have two favorite lines from that video. One is when he says, slicker than shh, and then he says, and it's not a swear if you say slicker than in front of it.
It's true. It's true.
And then when he says Crocs and socks are church attire.
Yes, they are.
Pretty solid stuff right there. So I gotta say, if someone from the future would have come up to me when I watched that video and said on March 10th, 2026, you're gonna be standing on a stage in Juneau and introducing Charlie to talk about an AI data center in Beaver Dam, I'd be like, yeah, let me just squeeze right past you there, buddy. And I think conversely, if someone would have come to Charlie and said, hey, I'm from the future, and on March 10th, 2026, you're going to be going up on stage talking about an AI data center in Beaver Dam being introduced by some chick you've been talking to from Watertown, he'd be like, yeah, keep her moving, buddy. But here we are. So without further ado, it is truly my honor to introduce our Wisconsin treasure, Charlie Berens.
Oh, that was very nice. Okay, all right. Hang on here. Okay. All right, real good. Guys, how we doing? We doing good, Beaver Dam? Okay. Thank you for the intro. Where'd you go? Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. For those of you who haven't been to Disneyland, it's kind of like Six Flags if it graduated high school. So. Beautiful place. It does have mice, I'll tell you that. But guys, thank you for coming out. Give yourselves a big round of applause for being here today. Everybody make sure to tip your bartender back there, okay? It is Lent. And I see a lot of people drinking, so I know there's a lot of Catholics in this audience tonight. So cheers to, okay, a lot of Protestants. I don't need to talk to you then. No, I'll talk to Protestants, don't worry. Beaver Dam, it holds a really special place in my heart. It does. Because actually a few years ago, I was skiing over there on Beaver Dam Lake, and I hit my first ski jump. And it hit back. And I got a concussion. And every time I forget a joke on stage, I just remember Beaver Dam. And it's nice. It's really nice. So I'm here today because when it comes to these AI data centers, I just want Wisconsin to decide for Wisconsin. I want Beaver Dam to decide for Beaver Dam. I don't want a tech company deciding for you guys. It's really that simple. And there's some kind of myths going around about an AI data center, and people compare them to just a regular data center and say, well, if you use the internet, if you use email, if you do banking, then you need a data center. There's a difference between an AI data center and a traditional data center. So if people are calling you a hypocrite being against these things or NIMBY or whatever, just know there's a difference. Like an AI data center uses different hardware and GPUs, and those use a lot more energy and or water. And that's why a lot of us are here today with concerns about those. But comparing an AI data center, they're also massive. So comparing an AI data center to a traditional data center, that's kind of like comparing a dog to a wolf. You know, they both kind of look like dogs, right? But I mean, I'd only let one lick my face. So it's an important distinguishment we got here. I thought that was funnier. But anyways. We're here today talking about Meta's AI data center. And Mark Zuckerberg, he's got this famous quote, move fast and break things. And if trust is a thing, I think he probably broke it a little bit here. I think he broke it because Meta used 2 shell companies and had an NDA to hide their AI data center from the public for over a year. That's according to Wisconsin Watch. So no more NDAs. No more shell companies. You know, I mean, oh yeah, you can clap for that. Yeah, I mean, the shell companies are ridiculous too. Balloonist LLC, you know, we shouldn't have to hold the company up to our ear to hear Mark Zuckerberg cranking up our power bills. So that was a shell joke, you're welcome. But most people had no idea the AI data center was there until it started being constructed. And that's why this room is got so many different walks of life here. I mean, there are Democrats here, Republicans, there's liberals. I talked to libertarians. There's farmers, there's fishers, there's hunters, there's swingers, all in this room. Don't look at me like that. I know there's swingers. I've seen the pontoons, okay? Yeah, not all pontoon owners are swingers, but all swingers do own pontoons. That's a fact. But this is the most bipartisan issue since beer, and that should tell you something. I knew that would be an applause line. I knew it. But since I started doing this, I started doing it in Port Washington after I had people reach out to me, and I watched a Common Council meeting. You had a bunch of people that were opposed to this data center. Dozens spoke. Nobody spoke against it, and then there was a unanimous vote for the data center, and that just seemed like an imbalance of democracy to me. People have accused me, well, they haven't accused me. They've said stick to comedy, you know, and I'm good with that. I would love to stick with comedy. I don't want to be up here talking about AI data centers. I don't, and so like we'll make a deal. We'll make a deal. I would be happy to. I will stick to comedy when our politicians stick to policy and stop protecting big tech and start protecting the people that put them into office. And there's also some people who've said that I'm getting paid to do this, and I promise you guys, not gotten paid to do this. Definitely lost money doing this, but also, how dumb do you think I am? Like, I mean, do you think I'm gonna risk my career talking about the most powerful industry in the world and be on the side with no money, you know? Like, I would at least wanna get paid if I was doing that, but no, I've never been paid. This is just a passion of mine, and it's really, it's been a passion because when I put that first video out, it annoyed me. I wasn't expecting anything to happen, but then I saw all the response from that, and I had so many people reach out to me, and then it really solidified that passion to put the power back in the hands of the people of Wisconsin to decide their future. But the money is a good point to bring up. It's a very good point to bring up. And if you really do want to know who's getting paid, I used to be a journalist. Follow the money. That's the first thing they tell you. And I'd encourage all of you to follow the lobbying dollars flowing through the state capitol right now to Democrats and Republicans. And it's working. For years, guys, the utilities have been trying to get big tech here. They make more money building new power plants. And our lawmakers gave big tech tax breaks. There's no secret why they're here. They're here because tax breaks, not great regulations for them. So, but meanwhile, the rest of us, we got to pick up the tab. How many of you guys have been at the bar and your buddy gets a call from his wife and she tries his phone, he's not answering the phone, but she's smart, she calls the bartender rats him out. Anyway, he's leaving, okay? And then he's mowing the lawn for the next 2 hours while you're paying his tab. Just me? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thought you guys would be with me on that. Not enough of you have a friend named Miles, I guess. But look, these data centers, they do bring jobs. They bring some jobs. They bring temporary construction jobs. They can support some industries. But I think it's an honest question to say, if that's at the expense of countless communities, is it really worth it? If you're time and again being cut out of the loop, out of the decision-making process, are the jobs worth that? And I think a better question is, why can't we protect people like we protect the bottom line? Why is that so hard? And by that, I mean we still haven't passed any meaningful AI legislation. Like when it comes to these data centers, we got less protection than Bill Gates on Epstein's Island. And that's, all right, that one worked, nice. See, that's me trying to stick to comedy. That's my olive branch right there, all right? No, but our power bills, they're still not protected. We're still being asked to trust that big tech and the utilities will just somehow work it out and we won't foot the bill. It hasn't worked in other states. I don't know why it's going to work here. There's no guarantees on how much water will be used. They like to say the closed loop system. I get it, but that just means more energy. If you have less water, you need more energy, and it takes a lot of water to make that energy at the various power plants. Those all need water too. That's our water. And the EPA is also fast-tracking the chemicals used in the water at these data centers, in these closed-loop systems and other ways that they cool them. They're fast-tracking chemicals, the EPA is. But where does that water go? In Wisconsin, right now, we got a bad PFAS problem in Wisconsin. And that's because we already rolled the dice trusting corporations. You know, and the PFAS, it's got a lot of problems. Like, there are forever chemicals in our fish. I want my walleye with a side of coleslaw, not cancer, you know? And I hate to say it, it's Lent. We got a lot of fish fries coming up. I'm going to eat the walleye. I'm going to risk it, but I wish I didn't have to. But how are we going to guarantee that big tech will protect our health and not just pay the fine because it's cheaper? Right now, there's more regulation on a bratwurst than the entire artificial intelligence industry. A bratwurst. And there is nothing wrong with the bratwurst I'm serving out of the back of my minivan, guys. If you want any, I'll be serving them after the show, all right? But we've already paid too much. We have. When it comes to big tech, we've already paid too much. We are the product. We've paid with our data. We've paid with our privacy. We've paid with the mental health of our children. We've paid with the education of our children. Largely due to technology, Gen Z is the first generation officially dubbed dumber than the last generation. And honestly, I'm okay with that last one, because I've been saying that for a while. I'm glad there's a study to back it up. Says a millennial. But anyways. Now they want us to give our land, and they want to give our water, and frankly, they want to give the soul of our small communities. They want us to keep paying more and more, and we are already the product. That's like asking the lobsters in the tank at Red Lobster to pay rent. Just give us the biscuits. We're here for the biscuits. Okay, not enough of you are going to Red Lobster, and it shows. The bigger picture here, though, the bigger picture. Let's just step back and look at the bigger picture, and that's trust. If a company is going to come in and ask us to sacrifice so much, you got to be able to trust that company. But most tech companies are already treating their machines better than they're treating people. I mean, just look at the lobbying that's going on against the protection of kids on social media as a perfect example of that. Most of us didn't ask for AI. Can it do some amazing things? Yes, absolutely. I'm not here to argue that, but it can do bad things too. It's like fire, right? And you know, it's a great thing to have fire. It is, but if you're gonna make a fire in your house, you should probably build a fireplace first. And as a guy who burnt down his house once, we need to trust the technology. And speaking of the technology, here's a look at a few headlines if we go through this. Leading AI models show up to 96% blackmail rate when their goals or existence is threatened. Go to the next one. Elon Musk's XAI chatbot Grok faces ICO probe after allegedly creating sexual imagery of children. Another OpenAI researcher quits, claims AI labs are taking very risky gamble with humanity amid the race toward AGI. In 95% of war games, AI models go nuclear, but not in 5%. OpenAI researcher resigns, accuses firm of suppressing AI risk studies. Marketplace for predators. Meta faces jury trial over child exploitation claims. A predator in your home. Mothers say chatbots encourage their sons to kill themselves. And Elon Musk says there's only a 20% chance of annihilation with AI. You guys got better odds than Russian roulette, you know? But my point here is it's a very narrow path to developing a more intelligent technology that's safe for humanity. The AI companies need these data centers. But maybe before we decide to completely change our communities, these tech companies, they need to show us why we can trust them. And most importantly, go Packers and F the Bears. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Is Charlie the man or what, y'all? I mean, for real. For anybody who was on the fence about him or thought, you know, you were coming here like, what's this dude gonna say? I hope now that you've been converted. Because I'm telling you, he really is this smart and this genuine and this awesome and doing this for free for all the right reasons. So please, let's give it up. And he's in the middle of a tour right now. Like, all right. So how are we feeling, everybody? Woo! There we go. Yeah. All right. The hat's coming off for a minute. Okay, because we're about to really have some fun now. Okay? Getting into the big show now. All right. So, for anybody who has come to a Beaver Dam Common Council meeting, you know two things. In fact, let's have a little audience participation on this one. How many minutes do you get when you get to come up and speak? Two. Right. Wow, that's really a lot. My gosh. And then what happens whenever you're done at the end of the 2 minutes? Look what I brought today. I know. I want to have a little fun. So, when the presenter's time is getting near, the 2-minute warning, I will wave the meta cookie. For those who have not seen the meta cookie and do not know the story, I will briefly tell it. It's a way to cement the lack of transparency around this project in the community. So, because of the NDA, the community did not know that it was a Meta data center officially until the term of the NDA ran out. And when it was announced that Meta was the developer, it was done in a closed-door, invite-only event. Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more of a reaction there, because yeah, like seriously, this is your community, and you weren't even invited to the unveiling of the data center that you knew nothing about. I mean, woo! All right, very good. So, at the end of that closed-door, invite-only event, After all the important people left, then they let us commoners in. And they let us in literally as far as the doorway. And they gave us some nice bottles of water and these cookies that they handed out at the event. Now, the cookies are lovely and they're made by a local baker. I support small business. I am a small business, so it's not a knock on the cookies and the baker who made them, okay? This is about Meta and the lack of transparency that they help to happen in your community, okay? So I saved my cookie as a souvenir, along with the sign that I made for the demonstration that some of us held outside that closed-door event that says, Beaver Dam city officials are shady. And I was gonna bring it and tape it to the front of the podium, but I thought, well, maybe that's going a little too far. But I thought, you know what? I'm gonna wave the Meta cookie for the 2-minute warning to let you guys know your time is approaching. And when it's 10 minutes, I will ding the bell. But I won't make you go sit down right away. You'll just know that you gotta kind of wrap her up and keep her moving, all right? Because again, we are a little behind schedule. So without further ado, I would love to bring up the first speaker. She is a lovely, smart young lady. I am happy to know her. I want to digress just really quick and say that one of the best things about getting involved in groups like this is even though what you're doing sucks and it makes you angry and it's really emotional, there's 2 wonderful things that come out of it. Number 1, when you can see your progress that you've made and you know you're making headway and you win and it feels great, like that's one of the things. And then the other thing is all the wonderful people that you meet along the way that you otherwise wouldn't know. And I am looking at one right now, and there's more, and we got DeForest and Port Washington peeps up in here from other fights around the state. Like, it really does take a village, not just in your own community, but you gotta form alliances near and far, because we really are all connected in this web of madness, all right? But really, like, thinking about that I wouldn't know these people if not for this project, like, yeah, the project sucks, and it all sucks, and I wish it didn't happen, and we all wish we didn't have to be here, but we're here. And let's just look at the glass half full that, you know, otherwise I wouldn't know you. We wouldn't know each other, right? Like, yay! All right, very good. So, yes, Emily is definitely one of those people that I'm very happy to know that I otherwise wouldn't know. So I will introduce her as a Beaver Dam native whose family lives less than a mile from the site. So she's going to come up here and share some things from her wonderfully smart brain. So please give it up for Emily.
Hey everyone. Thanks for coming out. It's so great to see so many people here, though it is unfortunate the circumstances under which we're gathering. My name is Emily, and like Sarah said, I was born and raised on the edge of Beaver Dam, surrounded by what we all know and love, agricultural fields, and I would always joke to my friends from out of town that my closest neighbors were cows, and that was true for the longest time. I always thought that Beaver Dam would be a constant in my life, an anchor, and something that I could always return to, and it would always be the same. But that all changed in 2024 when I was talking to a neighbor and they just happened to mention, oh, did you hear about this industrial site coming to the field across from your property? And to say that my family was surprised would be an understatement. We've lived in this house that I currently live in for the past 30 years, and we didn't hear a peep about more than hundreds of acres of industrial development coming across the street. The next day, I went to the Beaver Dam City Council to try to see if I could get any answers, anything at all, and I got nothing. I was pressing the city administrator at the time to get some type of information about what was going on in my literal backyard, and he had the gall to ask me, "Why do you care?" And I remember completely seeing red at that moment, being completely gobsmacked that someone who is a public servant would ask that of a community member trying to understand the current situation of their town. I then watched over the next few weeks as the city unceremoniously and unanimously annexed and rezoned this land to the city of Beaver Dam, still with no idea what was coming. In these meetings where huge decisions were being made for our town, my mother and I were some of the only people, if not the only people, in the room. And I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, is this not a huge development that's happening in the town and nobody's talking about it? Was this just how things happened in local government? I had no idea. It wasn't until all of the permits were approved, the developer agreements were signed, that the city finally announced that a data center was coming to town. At that point, construction and earthwork followed a few months later. A few months later, we learned that it was Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, of course. One of the biggest tech companies in the world was coming to my literal backyard. How does something like this happen in small town Wisconsin? Good old Beaver Dam. This is the biggest industrial development that Beaver Dam has ever seen and likely will ever see, and yet the community was completely in the dark. Well, it turns out, in my opinion, based on my research of the events, this lack of transparency was by design, and we can look at how this all went down. So I prepared a timeline. Correct. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. 2018 to 2019, Alliant Energy, our energy provider, and one of the largest investor-owned utilities in the state, approached individual landowners and farmers to secure options for their land. This is what I call the land aggregation phase. And they were able to get many hundreds of acres of land. From then on out, Alliant Energy and the city of Beaver Dam were, in their own words, hunting for a whale. And I take this to mean a large energy user to develop that site. And from the perspective of an electric company, what bigger catch is there than a data center? In 2023, the Beaver Dam Area Development Corporation executive director signs a non-disclosure agreement with a mysterious LLC. And we now know that this is a shell company who is associated with other Meta data center developments around the state. In September of 2024, this is where my story began. The Beaver Dam Common Council unanimously approves the annexation and the rezoning of the land, no mention of a data center. December 2024, City Council once again unanimously and unceremoniously approves the development agreement, utilities and water use agreements with yet an additional shell company, once again obfuscating the true identity of the developer. And then in February, we learn it's a data center. In May, they start constructing. And in November of 2025, which was very recently, we learned that it's Meta officially. On one hand, this lack of transparency with communities seems to be, in my opinion, part of the business playbook of how these data centers are coming to small towns just like ours, across the state and across the country. In fact, there are 4 other Wisconsin communities that we know of who have signed NDAs in relation to data centers. This is happening across the state, across the country. In fact, I was on a small town in Missouri's Facebook group, another no data center in our small Missouri town, and I was struck how their posts mirrored ours just 2 weeks later. It was almost to the T, it was uncanny. And yet, on the other hand, there are amazing communities around the state like Caledonia, where another speaker is from, who, by happenstance, learned that there was a data center proposed in their community, and were able to organize in time and with enough research to respond and communicate with their city government in order to convince them that this didn't make sense for their town. In Beaver Dam, we didn't get the chance to do that. All the things were agreed upon before we knew there was a data center. So how could we come to the table to really discuss with evidence-based research why we don't think this is a good plan or why we do think this is a good plan for the city? We just were not set up to really participate in open government as we were supposed to be. There are 51 data centers, large and small, currently in Wisconsin, with 11 more proposed or in the works. And it seems that every week we're hearing about a new one. I know last week we just heard about another Meta data center coming to Beloit, potentially. But why is this happening, and why is there this boom? I don't know if, I just want to cover up some of the basics about data centers. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people have been reading a lot of things in the news about them, so let me just go through the basics. What's a data center? A data center is the physical infrastructure for our daily lives. They're massive warehouses packed with servers that run 24/7, generating enormous amounts of heat, and they need to be continuously managed. This is where our email lives. This is where the cloud really is. And they're not new, but the speed and scale of their development is, especially driven by AI technology. A single ChatGPT query costs 5 times more energy than a Google search. And there's an enormous profit incentive to build as much as possible, as fast as possible, with very little consideration about the impacts on our communities, ecosystems, and natural resources, as we've seen here in Beaver Dam. So as much as AI may, 2 minutes? As much as AI may seem like magic, it really is not, and there are very real, visceral consequences in the real world. So some of the things that other people will be talking about, I just want to give an overview of some of the concerns communities would have about data centers. First, health impacts from pollution locally and also through energy generation, environmental degradation, and wildlife habitat loss, which we all love being so close to the Horicon Marsh. Light pollution, noise pollution, massive electricity and water consumption, rising utility bills for everybody, and years of construction while these hyperscale developments are being made. And on top of this, there is barely any real meaningful regulatory oversight currently in place for how these data centers will be running once they're up and going. And you might wonder, why is the city of Beaver Dam agreeing to do this? One of the main reasons is the potential for huge tax influxes into the city, and Prescott will talk more about this in detail. But from our calculations, based on the actual agreement documents, Meta will not contribute a single dollar to the city's general fund until 2044. That's 18 years. So Meta's data center is currently underway. The construction's underway. They say they're going to be having it running by 2027, but I think that's just phase 1, and I know from the documents there are 2 phases. They are also building a high voltage transmission lines and new substations from Beaver Dam to Randolph, specifically initiated by this data center development. And I think it's important to note here that Alliant Energy, the company who initiated this entire development in Beaver Dam, also has ownership share of ATC, the company who is building these transmission lines and substations. And as we've seen from places across the country and across the state, once you build one data center, more will come. Amazingly, Beaver Dam City is currently considering a second data center for a different company than Meta to be housed directly across the street from the already existing development. And the City Council will be discussing and voting on very important things about this second data center within the next week. So we really need to show up now. I just wanted to point out that our efforts are not for naught. Things are not hopeless. There are communities across Wisconsin who are successfully organizing against massive tech companies in their communities and winning. So the tools are available to us. Locally, there's a lot of things we can do, and we can discuss. I'm sure other people will be discussing that. But I just want to emphasize that this second data center is not approved yet. It's not set in stone. The land that is proposed on is city-owned land, and that land should be used for something that will actually benefit the community, not another billion-dollar company. So I just want to invite every person in this room to get involved, because once you do, the possibilities of our future change a lot. So we would love to have you with us. Sorry for going over time, and thank you.
Is she amazing or what? Like, yeah. How are we doing on the learning, friends? We learning a lot? I know, isn't it great? Yeah, so whenever I tell people about the Beaver Dam project, one of the things I say, so the land where the data center is, it used to be in the town of Trenton, and then the land was annexed to the city of Beaver Dam. But the people who live in the town of Trenton are the ones who are dealing with the fallout from the construction project the most. But when they write the city officials of Beaver Dam and say, hey, we're going through this stuff because of the construction, the city leaders of Beaver Dam say, well, you don't live in our city, so there's nothing we can do to help, like we don't have to talk to you. Uh-huh. Yeah. True story. Isn't that great? Yeah, thank you. It's the same in Port Washington. Yeah. On that note, let's keep her moving, friends. In the spirit of lack of transparency around this project, I am very pleased to bring up Michael Greif from the Midwest Environmental Advocates. He is a legal fellow at MEA, where his work has focused on legal pathways to safeguard Wisconsin's air, water, and energy. Michael grew up in Neenah, Wisconsin, and is a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley School of Law, and he is currently living in Madison. Please give it up to Michael for taking the time to be here.
Thank you, Sarah. Hey, everyone. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about transparency and open government tonight, which we've touched on already. We can go to the next slide. Does anyone know who painted this painting? Yeah, see, everyone knows. So the reason I wanted to start with this is because it speaks to how important the idea of local civic engagement is in America. I think it's really core to our idea of who we are as Americans, the idea you can show up to your town hall and have a say in the decisions being made there. And you know, this was painted in the 40s. Maybe it's a bit idealized, maybe a bit out of date, but I still feel like I see this every single week. Wisconsinites are a very publicly engaged group. You know, even when folks have full-time jobs and busy personal lives, people still find ways to learn about really in-depth and sometimes really boring topics because it impacts their community and they care about it. But none of that can happen if the public doesn't know what's going on, and that's when transparency comes in. And it's more than just an ideal that we're talking about. Transparency is written into Wisconsin law, so it's probably a little small for the folks in the back, but on the screen here is the statement of policy that's in Wisconsin law at the beginning of our open meetings law, and I'll just read it. It says, in recognition of the fact that a representative government of the American type is dependent upon an informed electorate, it is declared to be the policy of this state that the public is entitled to the fullest and most complete information regarding the affairs of government, as is compatible with the conduct of government business. And I think as we talk about these AI data centers in Wisconsin, it's important to keep in mind that principle. It's not just an ideal, it's written into our law. Next slide. So I'm just going to briefly touch on 4 transparency concerns that have come up with the AI data centers. The first is non-disclosure agreements. Also talk about anonymous LLCs or shell companies. I'm going to talk a little bit about the use of trade secrets to hide important information from the public, and then I'm going to finish up with closed meetings. So first off, a non-disclosure or confidentiality agreement is an agreement between two parties where they agree to not share information with the general public. And what we've seen in the context of AI data center development is these agreements have typically been between the tech company and local government staff. So that might not be a local elected official like a mayor, but it might be someone who works for the city, like an economic development director. And who that leaves in the dark is obviously the public, but it can also leave elected officials, the folks who are voting on these decisions, it can leave them in the dark. They might not even be able to get an answer from their staff person about what company is proposing this in our community. And as was noted, we've seen these in different communities across the state. It's worth noting that these NDAs don't create an exemption to Wisconsin's public records law, but they can still create a situation where public officials aren't able to speak publicly to the people they represent, and that's certainly a problem. The use of anonymous LLCs is another strategy we've seen. We know that in Beaver Dam, Meta used 2 different aliases during their development timeline. They called themselves Balloonist LLC, they called themselves Dagus LLC. And really this is a problem because it prevents evaluation of the corporate track record. I've heard these tech companies say they like to be a good neighbor. So imagine if someone was moving next door to you and they refused to tell you what their real name was, and if you tried to find out, they would hide it no matter how they could. That doesn't seem like what being a good neighbor is. I think most of us would find that a bit suspicious. And sometimes these shell companies have been used entirely through the approval process and even until after construction has begun. And again, that just makes it really hard to build trust in the community and for the community to evaluate a big decision that's going to be impacting their community for decades to come. We've also seen tech companies assert trade secret status for really important information, like how much energy or how much water they're going to be using. This was the case in Beaver Dam when we've seen Alliant, the utility, assert trade secret status for a lot of the information that has gone into their agreement with Meta. And we've also seen the same thing apply to the amount of water that these tech companies are going to be using in their data centers. So that's why my firm, Midwest Environmental Advocates, has brought 2 lawsuits in the last year challenging the assertion of trade secret status. So the first one was to reveal how much water the Microsoft data center in Mount Pleasant is going to be using. And then the second one was to reveal how much energy that Alliant is going to be providing to Meta just down the road in Beaver Dam. And the final transparency piece I want to touch on is the aspect of closed meetings. So Wisconsin has an open meetings law, and that says that the norm is that government meetings have to be held in public. And there's some exemptions to that, but they have to be narrowly construed. And what that means is that when the government is talking about something, they have to come up with a solid legal justification to talk about it behind closed doors. And even when they do that, they can only talk about the information that narrowly falls within that exemption. They can't just go behind closed doors and talk about whatever they want. And that's not something we've seen across the state when it's come to approving these data centers. In Beaver Dam, most of the discussions happened in closed meetings. Normally, to go into a closed meeting, the government have to state why they're doing so, and they have to provide a justification for doing so. They can't just go straight into it, but that's not something we've always been seeing when it's come to approving these AI data centers. And the fact that so few people knew about it is indicative of the impact those closed sessions can have. So that's all a lot of really bad news, and I'm sorry for that. Let's talk a little bit about what you can do about it. So the first thing is to show up and ask questions. Remember, your government officials work for you. It's your government, and you have a right to know what it's up to. And Wisconsin has laws through the Open Meetings Law, the Public Records Law, and Wisconsin's Environmental Policy Act that are meant to inform the public about decisions being made on their behalf. And those are all laws that we have a guide on the Midwest Environmental Advocates website. We have an open government guide that has more detail on those laws. I'd also be happy to stick around and talk to anyone after the hearing tonight. But knowing those laws and showing up and asking questions is a really important first step. And also, citizen enforcement of those laws is unfortunately often necessary. Usually these laws are only enforced by citizens raising a complaint and sometimes gathering the money to hire a lawyer to enforce these laws. It's a challenging situation, but it is often the status quo in Wisconsin. So with that, I saw the cookie being waved. Just to briefly summarize, transparency is not optional. It is Wisconsin's law. And it is your government, and you have a right to know what it is up to. And ultimately, tech companies might have valid reasons why they want secrecy, but tech company secrecy cannot replace democracy here in Wisconsin.
All right, Michael, yay! Yeah. So y'all need to know that Michael actually has taken much time from his personal time for free to help sort of guide us, not legal representation, but just out of the kindness of his heart to give us something to work with since, the city has left you high and dry. And he has generously taken the time to comb through all of the Common Council meetings from around the time that the project was being talked about and approved. And he was able to gather enough evidence from watching all those videos to prove that it's possible that maybe we might have something to work with from a legal standpoint. So, yeah. That's right. Redemption Day, I'm telling you, y'all. And this is just the beginning, okay? Remember, let this just be just the beginning. So, so he actually connected us with a lawyer who specializes in closed meeting laws. And, we're going to have many calls to action and steps that we want you to take with you to get fired up and involved. And one of those things is, that lawyer's $300 an hour. So we're going to have to keep building on this conversation, but if we want to even try and have a shot at pursuing this, we're going to need the community to rally and support. We're going to need donations for a legal fund, okay? So I'm just planting the seeds on that one because that's just something that's a reality if you want to fight back, which I strongly recommend that you should. All right. So let's keep her moving. Next up is Tom Content. He leads the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin, the nonpartisan independent nonprofit that serves as the consumer advocate for utility customers in proceedings that affect what Wisconsinites pay and the path the state takes on its energy future. Before joining CUB 9 years ago, Tom was a journalist covering energy, utilities, and sustainability for more than 20 years for newspapers in Green Bay and Milwaukee. It is truly an honor to have Tom here, and I really appreciate him taking his time to be here, so let's give it up.
Howdy. Glad to be here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what CUB is and what we do and then how we're getting involved with the data center issue at the Public Service Commission and frankly at the legislature. So what the heck is CUB? So we are as she said, the nonpartisan independent nonprofit consumer advocate. So Wisconsin has two firsts. We were the first state in the country to regulate utilities. We were the first state in the country to create a CUB as a consumer advocate for residential and small business customers. And what we try to do is advocate for fairness for people paying the bills, for lower costs as much as possible, but we are a small nonprofit. We have 6 employees. I have a team of an economist, a policy lead, an analyst who used to work at Alliant, so he's telling me all sorts of stuff about Alliant, and then an attorney and one other person. So we're a pretty small group. We represent residential and small business customers. And so where do we do that work? We're at the Public Service Commission. And so every other year, Alliant files a rate case to increase prices. So they just got approval to increase prices January 1st. We were able to negotiate that down from the original request, but it was still going to be about 5% per year on electricity bills. We're going to have a big rate case this year involving We Energies. We Energies and WPS in Green Bay will be this year's fun in terms of rate case season. The PSC is currently has a record caseload of cases. So the other cases are construction cases for power plants and power lines. We've got, in light of AI data centers, we've got billions and billions of dollars of proposals in front of the PSC right now. The more they build, the more they earn. So there's this built-in incentive to overbuild in our state, and I'll get to that in a minute, but that's one of the reasons we're there for you, is try to make sure that we don't overbuild the system and saddle customers with extra costs. And then they have a lot of other cases that are smaller cases, and then they have the 2 biggest cases that are in CUB's 46 years of existence. The 2 biggest cases that they have are the We Energies data center case and the Alliant data center case, because that's setting the tone for how Wisconsin's going to regulate data centers. So we're spending time at the PSC and at the legislature. So why do we have these monopolies in the first place, right? Why a monopoly? So this is early 1900s photo of power lines. It's a spaghetti of power lines on a city street, and I think this is New York City, but it could be Milwaukee too. Basically showing you had 5 different companies trying to string lines down the same street, so it was a mess. But Wisconsin had fighting Bob LaFollette. So he was the first. So we became the first state in the country to regulate utilities. It started with the railroads monopolies. And his idea was, okay, let's have balance. Let's make sure, carve up the state so that every utility has its own territory. But then the PSC will have a state agency to regulate them, to make sure, and that's as a proxy for competition, they're going to set the prices at a fair level, and then you don't want your monopoly to go out of business, so they have to be financially healthy, not too healthy, and so we'll get to that in a minute too. And then next slide. And so the goal. Our primary work is involving the investor-owned utilities, the ones whose stocks are publicly traded, right? So that's Alliant, that's We Energies, WPS, MG&E, and Xcel. And the goal is balance between the shareholders and the customers paying the bills. And so over the years, prices have gone up, but the utilities ask for much more. So over the last couple of years, we've actually saved customers. Helped save customers about $500 million and over $1.4 billion in the last 10 years, just by virtue of how much they've asked for and how much versus how much they got approved. The key is just trying to make sure that there's fairness. And when I used to write about these issues for the Journal Sentinel, the stories would run on the inside of the business section because, we didn't have data centers, and now everything's a top tier issue. And that's what we're seeing. Look at the polling. Well, before we get to that, look what's going on with bills. Just in the last 5 years, this is We Energies. Alliant is a little better than this. We Energies is higher rates. But a typical We Energies customer is paying 32% more in 2026 versus what they paid just in 2022. So we did an analysis that over 20 years, their prices have been higher than inflation, and now over 4 years, when inflation's been high, they've also been higher than inflation. And then we're seeing that electricity and natural gas prices are big contributors to overall inflation, right? And then Wisconsinites are concerned about affordability. The most recent Marquette poll just came out about a week ago and said affordability and cost of living are either the number one, number two, or number three issue for all voters. And in fact, Marquette has done two polls about data centers, and the first one in October basically said, well, we know Wisconsin's purple, right? Ultimate purple, 51, 49, maybe sometimes 50 and a half, 49 and a half. So even last year, it was 55, 44 in October, with the costs of data centers outweighing the benefits. Fast forward to the more recent poll, I knew it would be bigger, but I didn't know it would be this much bigger. 70%. Just 29% Wisconsinites now think that the costs outweigh the benefits. And there was an interesting difference in the parties this time. Everybody went up in their criticism, but Republicans just went up a little, 55-43. Independents, it's a 51% gap, and Democrats, it's a 70% gap with 85% concern. So if you saw the election results last fall in New Jersey, in Virginia, in Georgia, it was a big indictment on higher prices on utility bills. And one of the pundits or stories that ran the next day was said basically Republicans and Democrats don't agree on much, but nobody likes data centers. And the most recent poll, Marquette poll, basically says the same thing. The two takeaways from the media stories were nobody knows who the heck is running for governor, and people don't like data centers. So the utility industry used to be a stodgy, low-risk industry, and now it's caught up in this AI tech wave. So that's where we, as the consumer watchdog, are in this position of let's verify, let's make sure everything's needed, let's make sure that everything is needed. And so I just want to talk about how big these data centers are. So we now know, because of their MEA's lawsuit, that the Alliant project is 220 megawatts. Over by Milwaukee, the data center is, just go forward about 4 slides. The two data centers are 5,300 megawatts, 1,800 for Microsoft, 3,500 for Port Washington at the max. That's as big as We Energy's entire system today. So that's 2 customers using as much energy as 1.1 million customers. So this is huge energy demand. We have concerns about people have all these power plants having to be built, and customers not being able to. Business plans could change for the tech companies, and then customers could be left holding the bag. So in the cases right now at the PSC, go to Tom Hanks. So the concern we had, we wrote a lot of testimony, and basically, it's like 50 pages, it's dense testimony from economists, but basically one of the bottom lines is this, that instead of the shell company saying it's going to put up the money, no, let's go with the parent, and make sure that customers are protected. In the case itself, the public comment period was extended because the PSC actually, one might say because of Michael's group's lawsuit, has required more transparency of the Alliant case. So now I can say that it's 220 megawatts. I can say that it's a 10-year contract. Our group is advocating for a 15 to 20-year contract, and we think that there need to be other protections in place for customers, including better exit fees. Wisconsinites are already paying $1 billion for dead power plants, for power plants that have already shut down that we're still paying for. And the concern is without good exit fees for these tech companies, how many of these power plants are actually going to be needed? What if the AI tech bubble, as the consumer advocate, we're the watchdog, right? So people think we're Debbie Downer sometimes, but as a former journalist, what the editors used to say is, if your mother says she loves you, check it out, find another source. And so we have to verify what is going on and to make sure that customers aren't holding the bag. So I just wanted to say one more thing, which I will just peek. So the public comment period ended yesterday. A lot of people weighed in, and we think that the PSC will make changes. We think we're asking that even if they approve the contract for the Beaver Dam project, that we have a list of about 12 recommendations for what the PSC should do. But overall, we think that for future Alliant projects, they need to not allow them to do these one-off contracts. They need to actually have a statewide tariff. And at the legislature, we're asking for a statewide framework so that there could be a consistent approach for all data center, all utilities, and dealing with data centers. There's more information about coming in the back. Thank you very much.
All right, how about that Tom, eh? I know, yay! Yep, some of these people like Tom and Brittany and Michael, they're people that I know through the work that I do, which is why I'm here, and it's just really a privilege to know them and all the wonderful things that they're doing to try and help make our world a better place and fight for the little guy, right? Hey, yeah, by the way, so you guys had this data center project approved without your knowledge. How do you feel about Alliant wanting to raise your rates because of it? Yeah, I know. All right, it just keeps getting better. All right, so now to Mr. Prescott Balch, who has been invaluable, not just in this community of Beaver Dam, but all over. Prescott Balch is a retired technology executive living in Caledonia. He had a data center proposal land in his community in the summer of 2025 and helped to lead the effort to resist it. As a technology professional, he believes we need data centers, but that finding the right place for them is the challenge. Sharing his industry expertise, he has been traveling the upper Midwest trying to educate communities on the risks and to shine a more realistic light on the proclaimed benefits. Good decisions are well-informed decisions, especially decisions of this magnitude. Let me please bring to the stage a new trusted friend, Prescott Balch.
Since Tom told you why your energy rates were going to go up, I'm going to tell you where your taxes are going to go up. So it'd be a nice little segue. I am going to tell you sort of how you got where you are, the kind of mess that was created for you by your elected officials. Similar presentation I did in Port Washington. The only nice thing I'm going to say about what has happened here in terms of the deal is that it's not as bad as Port Washington's. That's it. That's all you got. Sorry, what? Okay. She's educating me. I should be good at this by now. All right. Okay, that's who I am. I'm the kid who paid attention in math class. Next. I'm going to tell you why governments love these data center deals. They're not, the people signing these deals, the elected officials, are not stupid people. I'm convinced of that most of the time. But so they have a list of incentives that they're responding to that explain their behavior, and I'm going to walk you through that. So their local government needs money to provide services. That's not a surprise to anybody. There is, however, a state law, and I'll call it a very dumb state law, that says if a community wants to raise their tax levy, the total that they collect from you, that they have to have the new construction in order to justify it. If you're not building anything, the theory is you don't need more money. You don't need more police. You don't have more people if there's no construction going on. It's the proxy that they chose to determine how much you could raise taxes. So if that's the only variable that they can control, that's the one that they're going to chase. So give me some construction. We'll take anything. Doesn't matter. The state at the same time is saying, we want to do something, because that's what politicians like to do, something, anything. And they decide they want to attract this new data center development stuff, so they pass a sales and use tax exemption. That's worth hundreds of millions of dollars to the 3 active projects in the state. Not a trivial sum. And it's got all of the developers descending on the state looking for big, large swaths of property to build on. Also, the state decided to do something even dumber still, which was exempt Beaver Dam and Port Washington from this thing called the TID 12% rule. You don't need to know what that is. Just trust me that it was a really dumb idea, and it was very bipartisan. So this creates a perfect storm. You've got an eager local government, an eager developer, an eager state government. Everybody's eager, and none of you know what's going on while all these eager beavers are running around making a deal. And the question, is anybody looking out for the taxpayer? Spoiler alert on that one, the answer is no. So let's look at the historical performance of Beaver Dam on that one metric that I said was what drove that calculation for how much more tax revenue that they could get out of you. That new construction number, this chart on the right-hand side, the bottom right-hand corner of it says 0.8% per year. That's as much new construction as Beaver Dam has been producing on average for the last 8 years. That is very weak. And it's the metric the state uses. So what this slide is trying to tell you is your elected officials in the city are feeling the stress of inflation, which is going up by 31% in that same time period, but you're only increasing that new construction number and hence your tax levy by less than 1% per year over that time period. So inflation is eating away at your purchasing power, and your city elected officials are getting really nervous. So what do? Well, instead of calling themselves Balloonist LLC, they should have called themselves Nigerian Prince LLC. Because they called up and they said, we can build $567 million worth of a building. All you have to do is give me your bank account number. And they took the call and they gave them their bank account number. So let's talk about the deal. The deal is tax increment financed. I'm not going to explain that to you. You can trust I've done my homework on it. It is the best way to really simply define it to you is it's a loaded weapon pointed at taxpayers. So Meta is going to provide $567 million in new construction, which you now know your city is after because that's the way they get to raise taxes. That's going to produce $187 million in new tax revenue between 2026 and 2045. The city, in turn, out of that $187 million in tax revenue, is promising to give $110 million of that back to Meta. Hey, you want to know why? I'll come back to that. Meta, because their tax payments are stuck in this tax increment thingy, their tax payments don't contribute to your general fund, and as Emily said, through 2044. I'm going to show you why it's through 2046 in a minute. But that's the secret Bob slide at the end. So through the whole duration of this tax increment district and tax increment financing, Meta's just paying things off that are in this separate set of books called the tax increment district. And so the general fund of the city, whether it's police officers, police cars, fire equipment, whatever, none of that is contributed to by the Meta tax payments. Meta's tax payments are stuck in the TID, paying for things in the TID, by the way, one of which is paying Meta back for the taxes that they're paying. So another way to look at this is this as a subsidy. 110 million divided by 567 million is a 19% subsidy of the total value of the building. So that's a pretty good deal. You could also look at it as a percentage reimbursement of 59%. Now I tell you, if you go build a house, you should go to City Hall and say, can I have those same terms? Can I have my taxes back for the next 20 years to pay myself back for 20% of the value of the building? It's a raw deal. But I want to go through some other math too, which really sort of points out the absurdity of that 110 million. Meta earns a profit of $60 billion a year. Over the 20-year period of that TID, that's $1.2 trillion. That's less than 1% of 1% of their profits, that 110 million. There's a clause in the legislation for the tax increment district that you have to promise, or pinky swear, that you would not do the deal unless the municipal funding was available. So what that means is your city, your county, your school district, and your community college district all get together in a room. The Meta people get together and they say, yes, we promise that none of us would be able to do this deal unless Meta got $110 million in tax credits. Less than 1% of 1% of their profits over the next 20 years. It is a rounding error on a rounding error, and they're telling you, and they're desperate. AI tech companies right now are absolutely desperate for this land to build these data centers to be the first in the race to get to the full build-out. They are desperate. They would have done this for any price. They would have paid you to do it. Another way to look at these numbers is to look at the Beaver Dam equation and say, why did they sign up for this? Think about the problem they were trying to solve. You can't keep pace with inflation. Your tax revenue is $8.7 million a year. If you want to raise that 4% a year, which is perfectly fine, any community in the state would be happy with that raise. That's $350,000 a year. That's all you need. Like Meta would have stroked you a check for that in a heartbeat. It's ridiculous that somehow you got that equation reversed and you're pushing $110 million to them instead of them giving you money, and you're not going to see any of the money that they're paying in taxes until 2046. If they're still around, yeah. So let's cookie. Don't give me the cookie. I'm on strike. I'm going. Next slide. Throw me off this stage. So, did you say we wouldn't see money until 2046? Yes, but it gets worse. So there's another big problem. Because of the way the TID legislation works, if the city wants to use the new construction to raise the levy, they can use the new construction from the data center. But because the data center's tax payments are stuck in that TID, they have a choice to make. I can take the new construction and raise the tax levy, but then only the current residents will pay increased taxes. If I don't take the construction from the project, I don't raise your taxes, but then I get no benefit out of the deal. The tax levy is the same as it was before, and they lose the opportunity forever to take the construction. So they can't win. Your city administrator admitted to me that they were going to, quote, have to take some, meaning have to take some of the new construction and have to raise your taxes over this next 20-year period while you patiently wait for Meta to finally contribute to the general fund. Next. So, did you say our taxes would go up? Yes, but it gets worse. So there's one, how can it get worse? So there's this slide you don't have to read, sorry, it's really small and you can't see it in the back. But it's going to last 2 years longer than they thought it would. This is a page out of what's called the cash flow statement or cash flow projection in the TID document. It's put together by a professional firm that your city paid for. It was reviewed by your economic development director. It was reviewed and approved by your city council. Nobody saw this error. It took me 5 months to find this error, although I wasn't looking at it full time and I wasn't paid to do so. But they used the wrong tax rate on this form. It was a really simple problem. By using the wrong tax rate, they overestimated the amount of tax revenue that's going to be produced. It's a $20 million error, and what that means, it's 2 years longer for the TID to pay itself off and to be able to close. So instead of 2044, as Emily said, it's really 2046, which is the first time that if everything goes according to plan, and you know how that goes, if everything goes according to plan, you will not see a dime of tax revenue from this project into your general fund until the year 2046. See? The moral of this story is, when you do big projects, you can have big mistakes, really big mistakes. This will become 30-something% of your total valuation in the city. You're going to be owned by this company because they signed, your city elected officials signed you up for this, and they signed terms of a deal that are just absolutely horrible. You're protected against that. One more thing on the Oppidan proposal. It's good that it's smaller than Meta. It's a 2% increase rather than 23. It's good that they don't need tax reimbursements. But your city hasn't learned its lesson. They want to add it to a TID. If they add it to a TID, there's no tax revenue benefit to the city until 2036. And it tempts them again with another 2% increase on your taxes, but not Oppidan's taxes. There's almost no employment to this thing past construction. There's no indirect economic development benefit. And it's your property. You own it. There's no benefit in it based on what they want to do with it. And they're hiding the tax revenue from you for at least 10 years. I think you should demand more. You deserve more. They made a crappy deal with Meta. Don't let them make another crappy deal with Oppidan.
Do you see why he's the man? Yeah, that's right. And I really need you guys to really let the stuff he just said swirl around in your head, okay? Especially the part where a bunch of us were standing at a common council meeting where he came and showed the facts and the math to the city administrator, and the city administrator admitted they have to raise your taxes. Have to. Yeah. So, again, please let this fire stay lit under your butt and keep her moving, all right? Don't let this, in the words of the dude, this aggression will not stand, man. Yeah. All right. Now we get to bring up the lovely Dr. Brittany Keys, who is a physical therapist and the Clean Air Policy Manager with Healthy Climate Wisconsin. She travels the state to advocate against new, large, stationary sources of pollution, presenting at community forums, testifying at public hearings, and engaging elected officials. And I'm just adding that and just being overall awesome. She has presented on the health harms of data centers at the state and local level, and on the health harms of climate change and air pollution at the national level. She resides in Beloit with her family, where she has fought against Alliant Energy's ever-expanding gas plant facility for the past 4 years, determined to address pollution at its source because clean air saves lives. She is grateful for the opportunity to be with you today, standing in solidarity and hope as we engage in this shared struggle together.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you to all of you. I know that the construction of one data center has started, but as said, you have inspired and helped other communities already. Being from Beloit, we have a Meta and Alliant project that was just surfaced because of some excellent investigative reporting. Otherwise, we would potentially be right in your seats. But because we have seen your resistance to this, your organizing, and the learned lessons, we know we're not alone. And so I wanted you guys to all know you're making a difference already. So I'm with Healthy Climate Wisconsin. We are a statewide nonprofit of health professionals working to address environmental issues to improve our health of our patients and our communities. Next slide. So as Emily had shared, we have data centers already all over the state, but not all data centers are created equal. Charlie also spoke about this. Some are like the size of a closet, some are the size of a room, some are small buildings. It's these hyperscale data centers that are really the problem, and they are a growing environmental and public health threat. When it comes to health impacts, there are. And the main categories fall under pollution to our air, water, light, sound, energy cost or energy burden, and our environment or climate future. Next slide. So when it comes to air pollution, you have the pollution that is on site at the data center, because they have, their backup energy generation is met with large diesel generators. Diesel generators, when they burn, they emit known carcinogens, and these aren't small. Microsoft's air permit for sites 2 and 3, they were permitted over 220 large diesel generators. These don't just run during blackouts and brownouts, they're also ran for maintenance monthly, and then if there's any big strains on the grid. But the biggest issue for health harms and threats comes from the air pollution from the off-site fossil fuels burnt to meet the energy needs and demands. And this comes from coal or gas plants. And the research here is solid. We know that the air pollution from burning the fossil fuels creates NOx, SO2, ozone, and then the most harmful for our health is particulate matter. And you can see like those little circles there, that's those little pink circles by the little blue circles, that's PM 2.5, or the pink, and that's next to the diameter of a human hair, which is next to a grain of sand. The big thing is we can't see these, right? But and that being so small, when we breathe them in, and they can go into our lungs and be absorbed into our lungs and cause breathing problems, lung disease, increased rates of asthma, cancer, but also absorbed into our bloodstream. And when that happens, they circulate around the body and can really result in negative health harms in wherever they end up. So impacting their kidneys, our heart. Air pollution is one of the #1 drivers of heart disease, impacts our cognitive development, increased risk of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke, and then also related to adverse birth outcomes and impacts the developing fetus and, of course, our children. Next slide. So how has this looked and played out in Wisconsin? So first, Microsoft announced less than 2 years ago that they were going to build out these data centers. Groups were pushing them, well, let's not build out more fossil fuels to meet the need. Next slide. And then, but they're like, oh, we're not against that. And then next slide. And so We Energies was saying, like, we're not against that because now they propose a $2 billion project wanting ratepayers to pay for new gas plants while we were still paying for old ones and old coal plants. Next slide. And these are very much connected, this data center demand to these new utility proposals. Next. And then what happened? The Public Service Commission approved it based on the demand of these data centers. And the next slide. But what does that mean for public health? We ran a study on just the gas plants proposed Oak Creek and Paris, and there was over $100 million in health-related costs every year associated with those new gas plants. The health-related harms, and these were justified by the data centers. So next slide. This is the health harms distribution from the 128 megawatt gas plant. And I want to just reflect that since the redaction, Meta is at going to require 220 megawatts. Okay, next slide. And then this is the health harm distribution of costs from the 1,100 megawatt gas plant that was approved and justified by We Energies because of data center demand. And I'm sorry, Michigan. I'm sorry, Northeast US. Next slide. All right, and so what about our water? Well, one, there's been a big issue of transparency associated with trade secrets, as we've heard from Michael. And they're talking about, well, we're not going to use as much, and it's behind like closed loop. And the big thing there and the big concerns are the chemicals, Charlie touched on this, chemicals that are put in it, PFAS, and then the off-site water use. So these closed loop systems use a lot more energy. And a study by Clean Wisconsin showed that already 70% of our water withdrawals are attributed to power generation. So they ran the numbers, and if the power needs by Vantage were met by burning fossil fuels, then they would require at least 54 million of gallons of water per day, which is double the amount used by every home, business, and manufacturer in Green Bay. So they might say they're using less water because it's closed loop. It's just displacing that water use by the increased energy demands. Next slide. And then Charlie brought up the concerns of how the EPA is bringing up expediting the chemicals that can be used in this system. And this is the announcement by the EPA last September, advertising to chemical developers that they are going to try to minimize the regulatory burden when it's being used for data centers. And then we have sound pollution. The American Speech and Language and Hearing Association says like the threshold for when your hearing could be impacted is right around 70 decibels, and noise pollution from data centers can be between 50 and 98. So it can breach that threshold, and especially the closer you are to the facility.
What about our children? What about our grandchildren? What about...
They will all be impacted. It's a great question, and this impacts all of us. Go ahead, next slide. And so really, these build-outs are coming out fast and furious, and so we should be centering and elevating the experiences of those that are living next to the developments, which I'm so glad we're going to be doing shortly. But the BBC highlighted, it's not just humans impacted. The quote was, "There are no birds around here anymore. The humming and buzzing from the data center scares away the wildlife from the area." And then later on, they mentioned with utility bills that some have gone up over 200%. Next slide. And then we have light pollution, which unfortunately the Wisconsin example is the 24-hour construction with our friends in Port Washington. And we know that light pollution is bad for the health of humans and as well as wildlife. And then it comes to energy. So when it comes to energy consumption, transparency has been a big issue, but we know from Port Washington and Mount Pleasant that those two data centers will require almost more energy than almost doubling the amount of homes within the entire state. And this is a public health issue. Next slide. Households that spend more than 2 to 4% on their energy bills are known to have high energy burden, and this is not just an urban issue. Individuals and communities throughout Wisconsin are really seeing this, and when you have to weigh if you're going to pay your energy bill or get groceries, pay your rent, or fill your prescription, this can really lead to chronic stress, impaired mental health, and adverse health outcomes. Next slide. But the utility says they won't displace any of the costs on you, but this is what is written. And this is what, when you look in front, right, it's clear as mud or just entirely redacted document.
Looks like an Epstein
And it wasn't until the public pressured them, MEA pressured them, and then you can see then the administrative law judge required them to refile so we could find out a little bit more that Tom shared, but it's still not enough to know how much we're being protected or how much they're offloading on us. Next slide. When it comes to the harms of environment, it's really associated with air pollution, and we're seeing that in the form of delayed coal plant retirements, new gas plants being proposed, and next slide. Also want to just flag as far as the harms of and the concerns of if there's a fire on site. Speaking to a local fireman earlier, and we really don't know the risk there and how communities are planning for that. So what can we do about it? Continue to organize just like you are and reach out to your elected officials, especially state. We need statewide action. You can sign some petitions for Pause to Protect, call on Governor Evers to call an emergency session for statewide action, engage with the Public Service Commission and the Department of Natural Resources. But the big thing I want to say is no one's coming to save us. We have to organize and push for the solutions that we need right now. An air permit does not mean you're safe. You're going to learn later that mining and a water permit does not mean anything is safe. So continue to organize and come together, and you're not alone just as this community. You have a community that is statewide, and let's help you block this second data center.
Brittany, I think my favorite thing about her is she's so sweet and like a bag full of sugar, but then man, is she spunky too. It's like the best combination. Yeah, you can give it up, yeah. All right, so a couple things, friends. Because the squirrels were running around in my brain in the beginning, I forgot to let you know what the purpose of is the Post-it notes on your chair, and that is for you to jot down any questions that you have in the course of the evening that you would like answered during the Q&A portion of the program. So, just clearing that up. And then also I want to just remind you, I want to just wow, these are really high quality, awesome. Yay, okay? Don't forget to look at them because they're chock full of really important information, like the city council meeting, your next common council meeting on this Monday, where they will likely be voting on the new data center proposal. So please, for the love of all that is holy, show up at that meeting. Let's use the momentum happening tonight to carry you through and plop you right there in that meeting and let them people know how you feel. So we are going to, Bryanna Handel is a first-generation dairy farmer in southern Wisconsin. Bryanna and her family have a passion for teaching people about agriculture. They host many farm events throughout the year and have a farm-to-table store that sources food from 35 local farmers. That is a beautiful thing. Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, in 2023, Bryanna and her family experienced stray voltage on their dairy farm the same day a substation was activated a half-mile from their farm. They have deep dived into the corruption as they try to save their dairy operation. Bryanna has been a voice for so many other farmers that have faced stray voltage and hopes to bring awareness to the general public on how dangerous these wind, solar, high transmission lines and data centers are to America's dairyland. So let's bring up Bryanna.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Bryanna, and we can go through the slides here. Like Sarah said, my husband and I are first-generation dairy farmers. We started in 2014 with 16 cows in a rented barn on the outside of Verona. We now run 180 acres. We have 65 cows and 5 kids, so progress, right? Go ahead. So I know this writing is really small, so if you want to see it in detail, you can reach out and I'll send you it. The night of December 14th, what we noticed with our cows was they were acting extremely fidgety. Our kids live that great life of riding their bicycles up and down the mangers and stuff like that, and our cows have always been extremely docile. And that night they were unbearable. We were actually kind of unable to milk them. It took us 2.5 hours to milk 65 cows, where normally it takes an hour. So something was going on. This wasn't how our cows acted. What they were doing was kicking off the units, backing in and out of stalls, and just really acting kind of crazy. You can go ahead. So I reached out to Alliant Energy December 18th to ask them to come do a stray voltage investigation on our farm. And I had voiced my concern that, this all happened on Thursday, December 14th, and they said, well, that's the same day we hooked up that sub. So, all the dots kind of aligned as to where the problem was sourced, and they did come out and they did do their investigation, and they found that, they were under the legal limit from the Wisconsin Public Service Commission, but also not really, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission is using data from 1989 that has been found fraudulent in court. But anyways, go ahead. So they did their investigation and they saw that we were at 0.39 in the barn and then 0.8 volts up in our heifer shed. So what they did was they grounded all the poles. We're a 1/4 mile long driveway, so they grounded all those poles up and down our driveway to kind of try to get the current to dissipate. So you can just kind of We had asked to be isolated on demand because our cows were not getting any better even with the grounding that they had put out. So Wisconsin has allowed it. If a farmer asks to be isolated, the utility has to isolate them. So we had asked to be isolated, and in order to get isolated in the state of Wisconsin, you need to have a master electrician sign a paperwork saying that your farm is safe. Unfortunately, we couldn't get anybody to do that because when you reached out to an electrician, they were like, stray voltage, yeah, no way, not getting involved. So it took us months to get isolated, and in that time frame, we had some extreme losses. Finally, we were able to get a gentleman from Milwaukee to come out and sign the paperwork, but I'll kind of show you the losses that we had if you want to go to the cows. So this is my daughter Elizabeth when she was 4 years old. Like I said, she's milking her cow Zoe, very calm. It is really a video, but it's not videoing. So anyways, so what we saw during this time was cows lapping at the waters, like they were licking at them, trying not to get shocked. And so our manger, we can go back, our mangers were always wet, like soaked wet. And then one day after isolation, that's what our mangers look like, dry as can be. Just getting that electricity out of the cow's water. You can go to the next one. This is heifer 265. She ended up aborting her calf, and it took us 3 hours to get the calf out. She calved 3 months early, and we had nothing but problems with her after she calved. She is actually not on the farm anymore. You can go to the next one. So we also noticed unusual injuries like swollen hocks, just random like bulges on the cows. Like as you can see on the cow's brisket, it's all swollen, and then on her side, it's all swollen as well. You can go to the next one. We noticed a lot of weird discharge from the cow's nose. We noticed like a bunch of like abscess and like sores, open sores on the cows when nothing had happened to them. That heifer 298, we'll see her again, but she like just was going downhill fast. She was unable to drink water, and as you can see, her condition is not well. So you can go to the next one. We had lots of dead cows. That's nothing to laugh about, but I guess that's how I cope, right? So we had dead cows and dead calves. We had 12 cows that calved during this time frame, and 10 of the 12 calves were born dead on arrival. We can go to the next one. This is first calf heifer, 266. She was in the heifer shed where the stray voltage was the worst. Like you can see kind of towards the back, her liver is like extremely huge. So what her problem was she was extremely ketotic. There was no way we were going to be able to save her, but we tried. So we can go to the next one. And the reason she was ketotic was because she wasn't drinking water and she was trying to get the moisture through her feed, so she became overconditioned and got too fat. The next cow we have is Magnolia. She was found dead next to the water, and we sent her heart in, and what they found was her heart basically exploded from a surge when she took a drink of water. So we can go to the next one. Heifer 263, same deal with the ketosis. We tried everything we could do. Unfortunately, never got better. Same deal, overweight. So eventually, we had continued to talk to Alliant Energy through this time, and they just kept telling me, until the cows can talk, Brianna, we have to believe in the science. Again, science has been found fraudulent in court, and, I just didn't wake up one day and forget how to farm. So we tested the feed to make sure everything was good on our end, and it was. So we can go to the next one. Eventually, the condition of the heifers were getting so bad that we decided to put up waters up in the heifer shed and manually fill them 3 times a day, just to know that the cattle were getting water. And obviously, as you can see, they're drinking. We had extreme milk losses. The day they hooked up that sub, within a week, we had went from 60 pounds to 46 pounds in milk. Obviously, cows need water to produce milk, and they were not drinking, so we had a huge loss in milk production. And then we also saw like the somatic cell increase as well due to like the immune system of the cows. We shipped 6 cows April 6th after we were isolated. Unfortunately, their immune systems were just too compromised. There was no way we were getting them to produce milk again. So you can go to the next one. We did end up getting isolated March 13th. And as you can see, they had to do a variety of tests before isolation, and one was they had to cut their neutral. And when they cut their neutral, we went from, I believe it was 0.5 volts to 0.03 volts. And then as you can see, like the isolation continued. We had gone from, this was on the water line. We have a copper water line that runs from the house to the barn. And we figured that the voltage was just being attracted to that copper water line. So after we got isolated, we went from, before we were isolated, we were at 0.45 volts, which is technically under the Wisconsin Public Service Commission guidelines of what a cow can feel. And then once we got isolated, we went to 70 millivolts. You can go to the next one, and then there it is kind of the meters. During isolation in the heifer shed, we had set up trail cams and watched the meters at that time, and we had meters all around the farm. So you can go to the next one. Those are just notable impacts, we can skip that. What we notice now and have noticed for the last 2 years is during their peak usage hours, we unfortunately get the brunt of everything. And so like we could start chores at 6 a.m. and we would be at like, I think it's 0.7, and then by 6:20 when people are getting up, taking showers, making their coffee, we'd be up to 0.9 volts and then, or 0.09 volts, and then by 6:50 when people are really going to school and work, we would be at 1/10 of a volt to 0.15 volts. So you can go. I want to show this heifer. So this is 298. This is during the stray voltage, like the thick of it. Obviously, you can see she looks really bad. The next picture is 30 days after isolation. And then you can go to the next one. The next one was 60 days after isolation, and then the next one was 4 months after isolation. So you can see drinking water can really help an animal thrive. So yeah, that was kind of our experience with stray voltage, and we'll wrap it up just because I know that everybody's probably hungry. But what I would encourage the farmers in this area to do before this data center ever goes live is I would say put in a water meter so you have a baseline of how much water your cows are drinking. And then I would also probably ask for an independent to come and do a stray voltage investigation prior. So, and like you might not think you're very close, but there are some farms that I've talked to that the stray voltage is coming from like 8 to 10 miles away. So to think you're not going to be impacted, like I would just take these steps so you have a baseline in case this unfortunate thing happens to you too. So.
That was awesome.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come here. It's just important to reiterate, friends, that these data center projects don't just impact the general area that they're in or the actual community that they're in. The impacts are far-reaching beyond the bounds of the site. So let's just keep those things in mind as we move forward, hopefully with more rejuvenation to keep fighting against this. We are going to go ahead and release you to the yummy food we have for you. We will go ahead and convene back here at 9 o'clock where we will really get into the resident portion and the discussion portion of the program. So thanks so much for hanging out, and yeah, you guys are great. All right. Our next speaker. Brit Bumpus only moved to Beaver Dam a few months ago from California. She is a former Meta employee who is here today out of concern. In 2023, she declined to sign Meta's severance instead choosing to speak out against the company's unethical business practices and their blatant and willful violations of local and federal laws. So thank you so much, Brit, for being here. Let's give her a big hand.
Good evening. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge all the amazing people who came together to make this event happen. I also want to thank Charlie, who I think is in the other room right now. Okay. Thank you, Charlie, for being here. Thank you for everyone in attendance, both in the audience in front of me and those watching via the Facebook live stream. I think it's really important to directly address the fact that a majority of our organizing is being done on Facebook, and that's one of Meta's major social media platforms. Because of that, I'm going to get a little nerdy, and I'm going to quote Star Wars here because I really think that this quote applies to us. I am condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. It's from Andor. A few years ago, a very small group of people made a big decision that would greatly impact this community. I'm a former Meta employee, and I know I'm sorry I've been in therapy. In 2022, I interviewed with Meta after I was referred by a military veteran who had served alongside my children's father in Afghanistan. Meta was specifically looking to hire military veterans and military spouses as part of their Sorcerer development program. I was hopeful about the potential to try and make a positive impact at Meta. During my interview, I even told them how important Facebook had been for my children to communicate with their father while he was deployed. I had also told them how I was able to find so much information and support from other military families. I understand that Facebook is not just an app or a place where people share opinions. My official role at Meta was a sourcing specialist. This is a little bit like a recruiter, except my only job was to build a pipeline of candidates who met the basic qualifications for specific roles, then hand them off to a recruiter who would be their guide throughout the entire interview process. Before I was laid off, I was sourcing for AI and machine learning engineers. I'm happy to go into further detail about my time at Meta, but for the sake of tonight, I want to skip forward to one thing that stuck out in my mind and the reason I declined to sign Meta's severance. 1 week before Meta announced their major and first layoff, Mark Zuckerberg was in an all-employee meeting, and he was directly asked about a $725 million settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit regarding the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Mark laughed and said, "We have plenty of money." It was in that moment I realized following laws is for suckers when you're a billionaire. When you have enough money, you're above the law. When you own so much stock in your trillion-dollar company that you can make impulsive, expensive, and unethical decisions, you're not a CEO. You're an emperor. And it's not enough to conquer the digital world. Now you're after real land. When I first visited Dodge County last year, I felt that same feeling I had as a child growing up in the farmland of California's Central Valley. Beautiful open spaces, but a lot more ducks here. It was peaceful and calm, and when I moved here a few months ago, I was really excited. Charlie's jokes even started to make sense to me. At some point, I realized this community was in serious danger, and I wanted to do whatever I could to help. But I'm only one person, and by myself, I didn't even know where to start. I don't have the means or resources to stop a billionaire. And that's what you guys are doing. In a press release, Meta referred to Beaver Dam as vibrant. They called the local workforce skilled, the local infrastructure robust. Meta then enthusiastically announced their $1 billion Beaver Dam data center on their Facebook page just this past November. $1 billion is a lot of money. It's an almost incomprehensible number. Unless you know that Meta plans to spend $135 billion just this year alone on their AI infrastructure. What's $1 billion to Meta? It's a rounding error. It's the change they find in the couch cushions between quarterly earnings calls. The Beaver Dam data center represents less than 1% of Meta's AI budget this year. For context, that's less than what Meta paid to settle one single privacy lawsuit in Texas in 2024. Meta struck this initial deal to come here under an alias. They used a fake name until the contract was signed. I want you to think about what it says when a company has to use a pseudonym to secure a deal. That's the equivalent of Mark Zuckerberg having to catfish someone to get a date. Except in this case, it's a $1 trillion company catfishing the city council of a town of just 16,000 people. Meta doesn't want just one data center. In fact, I have spoken to people who are working on the crew who have told me that Meta plans 4 data centers. 4. So Meta has already announced that first data center. But Meta has a bigger plan. Multiple data centers that require hundreds of gigawatts. Now, not all of us speak in electrical wattage, so what is a gigawatt? 1 gigawatt can power roughly 750,000 homes. 750,000 homes, and Mark Zuckerberg wants hundreds of them. Beaver Dam is just one square on a very large chessboard. And I want to remind everyone that Meta is not using these data centers to improve your lives. They're using it to capture every piece of information possible to help companies sell you things you don't need. They're using it to collect audio and video of you against your knowledge or permission. And Mark Zuckerberg wants it to live in a giant building in your cornfields. Meta is also not just building infrastructure, they are building a political machine to protect their investments. This is not about what side of the political spectrum you fall on. This is about an out-of-control billionaire destroying your community and stealing your tax dollars. Now, what I'm gonna say next might sound like a conspiracy theory, but it's actually just Mark Zuckerberg's business strategy, and that's Meta will break the law on purpose, pay the fine, and move on. The math is public. Meta has paid over $7 billion in privacy violation settlements since 2019. That sounds enormous, but here's the thing. Their net income just this last year was $60 billion. So a $1 billion fine is 1.67%. It's a haircut, it's a nuisance, it's a parking ticket for a billionaire. Meta's data center is still being built, and it hasn't gone online. So I think there is still time for citizens to speak up, have their voices heard, block the additional data centers that are planned, and demand transparency. I do want to propose something because I know Meta is watching this right now. I want Meta to take steps forward to work directly with the community to create a first-of-its-kind workforce program where local students can learn the skills they'll need to continue to maintain and operate these facilities. If they're in here for the long haul, we need to be educating the next generation of HVAC technicians, plumbers, welders, and electricians. Meta needs Beaver Dam more than Beaver Dam needs Meta. You don't need Meta's community action grants to fund your schools. You need a school board that controls its own curriculum. You don't need $15 million for an energy fund. You need energy rates that don't spike because a server farm is pulling gigawatts next door. In Georgia, a Meta data center project caused resident wells to run dry, and that's not just a theoretical risk, that has happened. I think that you're in a negotiating position right now. Before that water starts flowing into their cooling systems, right now is when your leverage is maximum, so use it. You need to demand binding water use agreements. Ask what happened to your energy rates in 20 years. Ask what recourse you have if environmental commitments are not met. And the community deserves to know how Meta is going to use this data center, because right now, they are very much planning to use this data center to run their AI surveillance technology. Now I want to address the Beaver Dam City Council directly. You have an obligation to uphold the mission and values that are listed directly on the city's website. In case you forgot them, I'm going to remind you. Communication. You state you value clear and consistent communication to foster trust, that you promote open dialogue by listening, responding, and sharing information while respecting the law and privacy. You say integrity is essential, but you're working with a company that is anything but. After everything mentioned here tonight regarding Meta, does anyone still believe the city council is upholding these mission and values? No. You say you want community and safety and quality of life are critical, so the city can please show us in black and white where the safeguards are against water contamination. Where are the protections to ensure that your children and grandchildren are not pushed out of Beaver Dam because of increased costs and energy rate hikes? We need to see the net positive this Meta data center will bring this community. Thank you.
Yeah, Brit! Oh! I'm angry, but I also have chills. Yeah, right? Holy Toledos. And I gotta say, you know, the Meta cookie thing is sort of delighting me, but it just delighted me so much more waving it in front of an ex-Meta employee talking about Meta. Yeah, I'm weird, and that just amuses me greatly. All right, so now it is time to get into the local resident portion of the program. I am very happy to bring up Angela Davis. The Davis family are from Beaver Dam, I haven't even had anything to drink. The Davis family are Beaver Dam area residents who are active all over Dodge County. Angela has a degree in natural resources and is a substitute teacher for the Waupun and Beaver Dam school districts. Yay, teachers! Their family has found themselves direct neighbors to the industrial park, which is home to the data center. Boo! All right, Angela Davis, everybody.
Thank you. There have been many concerns and questions about the animals in the area, so we're going to just lighten it up a little bit and talk about what we've seen living across the road from the data center. This was taken right in front of our garage door. We're standing on our parking pad, and those are the walls that went up. Of course, they move really quick, so this photo's already outdated. And then you can also see very clearly across the road. And I just want you to remember that, because we're going to circle back to that in a minute, the fact that we can now see clearly everything that's going on. Since the construction began, we've noticed changes that are difficult to ignore. The deer that once moved calmly through the area, they now bolt across Hemlock Road, confused and disoriented, running from the open fields into the woods next to our home. Our owl, we have a great horned owl family that has lived out there for years in the pine stand next to our house. They have since moved across Hemlock Road, likely responding to the disruption of the loss of habitat for the animals lower on the food chain. So there's more food over there, so they moved across there so they can get more to eat. But this is a picture that we've taken. All the pictures that you'll see are pictures our family has taken. The next one, we had a birch tree that was cut down in our yard, and this housed a family of downy woodpeckers. The woodpeckers visit our feeders quite often. The amount of birds at our feeders have noticeably diminished. The apple tree had a home to a nest that we hadn't yet identified. That was one of our trees that had been cut down due to the data center coming into the area. We have hawks that sit along our yard, along the field edge. They still come in and out, but only where the trees remain. We had a number of trees cut down along the tree line that borders the farm field right in front of our house. Next. Across the road from that initial picture we looked at, between us and the data center was a big wetland. And across the road, the amphibians depend on that wetland area. Each spring, the salamanders would cross the road in dozens to come across into the woods next to our home. We had a bunch of the tiny frogs that are in our hand there. They would fill our yard. It was something our children and I look forward to every year. But this year, it's dry. And because they changed the dynamic of that area, there is no water over there this spring. None that goes all the way back around to where it would end by the trees that were back there. So this year we're worried. We're worried that it's going to be a silent spring, that the salamanders aren't going to return, that the spring peepers aren't going to sing. The frogs, the tiny ones that we would catch in the grass, they're not going to be hopping through the grass this summer. We don't know what's going to happen. We are waiting for them to return. Next one. Mammals are important too. This is our groundhog that we haven't seen in quite some time, so we're not sure if his home got disrupted and he moved on or what happened. But we've always welcomed possums, the skunks, and the raccoons to our yard because they naturally control grubs and ticks, and I hate ticks, so I'm totally okay with them coming through the yard and hanging out and visiting our compost pile and just being a part of the ecosystem out there. Next one. Our turkey friends. So turkeys regularly pass through our yard. We've counted as many as 30 coming together in the winter. This, of course, naturally brings predators that we have also seen foxes, and I think just the other night we heard the coyotes out there. These aren't isolated animals. They are part of a connected system, one that doesn't recognize municipal boundary lines, and they don't understand a destruction of habitat either. So this became real for us one day when a man walked through our yard and started tagging our trees to be cut down. That was the moment we realized that we did not have a say, not even on our own property. And I wanted to share a little bit about that, so I'm going to have my daughter speak about how it affected her quickly.
So when my bus pulled up to our house that day, my mom met me at our neighbor's house because it was blocked, our driveway was blocked. We came to find our trees that were like 45 to 50 years old, cut down. I was really sad about that, and I was angry, really angry. All of our trees along the road were completely cut down, just laying there. It was maddening and frustrating because those trees weren't just landscaping. They were habitat, wind protection, and shade. It was a part of our family's daily life.
And if you could go to the next slide. So thank you, Addie. I had to scroll back through our pictures and find some to kind of show what our yard looked like initially. This is looking into the same direction that you saw the data center in the beginning. So this is a few of our trees here, originally our evergreens. And then here's a few, again, from the front yard where we're cutting grass, and then in the backyard where the play set is. And then this is looking from the corner of our property where our neighbor is towards our house. This was our apple tree, and that was one of the 10 trees that were cut down. So the apple tree, the small evergreen, the two tall ones right next to our house, they had expanded the right-of-way, so now our house is borderline right-of-way. Here you go. This is looking from our driveway west. This is how they left the trees for quite a while before they decided to come back and clean them up. So they just kind of dropped them and left them there for the weekend. This is a before and after side by side. You can see the trees are still up, and then you can see the trees are gone, and you can see all the way down the road. 151 would be at the end down there, and you can see our shed now because they just went all the way through. So that's our spruce, that's a big white pine that's gone, and a few walnut trees as well. Next, please. These are the two big ones that were next to our house. So here's the ones we were talking about that were marked as right away and are gone, and the branches were just left along the driveway for about a week and a half or so before they came back to clean them up. And of course, now we have no protection from that northwest wind and snow at our house. These are then now looking up from the tree line. So these are the walnut trees that they cut down and left. They informed us all the wood would be left behind, that they would cut it fireplace length and just leave it on our property, and that they would remove the branches. Next, please. So I just want to also, before I talk about this, to let you know that I did not sit quietly about this. I called the city, I called the town, I called ATC, I called Alliant, asked if there was anything we could do, if there was anything that they could help with replanting, and of course nobody said no, there's no program for that, and we are on our own. And of course we had to get a brand new deck, and now our deck is constantly covered in a light colored dust from the exposed and blasted sandstone at the site. That dust also settles on our cars and our trash cans as well. But like I said, there was no replanting program, no coordinated plan to restore any of the appropriate vegetation that they told us that we could do. And yes, we were kind of left on our own. So now this is taken from our window. This is actually looking at Generac. So the light pollution is real. This pours into our living room window, and then this one was actually taken from the downstairs window. So the light pollution will be real, and it will affect things. It will affect the nocturnal animals that come out at night. There's also a lot of runoff that goes into the pond that's right behind Generac. If you look on the ground, there's a reflection. That's the runoff pond, the evaporation pond that doesn't actually evaporate. That has no mosquito mitigation. So in the summertime, it's really bad out by our house because there's no control for that either. So we've seen that the land can heal itself. There's a hill that they left in the middle of the cornfield that now has trees and vegetation growing on it without any planning or care. That tells us that mitigation is possible. But what worries us the most is the unknown. We've gone from living in the country to living beside an industrial park. We don't fully know how these systems work, what the runoff could be, or what might escape from the site over time. So last one, we'll end on a fun note here. So we try to be brave, but this is our family. So we were just here tonight to share our story. We know we can't stop the progress, but we just want thoughtful and responsible progress. Progress that respects people, wildlife, and the land we all depend on. And my daughter chose this quote from Mahatma Gandhi for us to end on. The earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. So all we're asking of ourselves and our community, say thank you.
All right. Thank you, Angela, so much for taking the time to share your story. I just got to say that in the time I've spent here working with all of you and getting to know the friends in Port Washington, I definitively believe to my core that AI data center construction is the most cruel thing that a city can do to its residents. It really, truly is. They should be ashamed of themselves for doing this to you. And my heart is with everyone here and everyone anywhere who's dealing with this, because it's just awful. And so on that note, I want to bring up Maily Kocinski, who recently gave a testimony at a Senate hearing about data center legislation that if you have a heart, it would rip it out. Because her story is just so powerful, and the way she tells it is so moving. And so I wish I had tissues for people. We have napkins around here somewhere if you need them. But it is definitely my pleasure to introduce a wonderful, strong woman, Maily Kocinski.
Good evening. Thank you for staying here so late. So, my name's Maily Kocinski. I'm an educator. I'm a lifelong Beaver Dam resident. I bought the home across the street from my childhood home. I live next to my parents. Not long ago, I was in an audience just like this, and I didn't even know what a data center was. And I certainly never imagined I would be in Madison at the Capitol talking about them. But something started happening on our property that I could not explain. And as our state is becoming more attractive to data centers, communities like Beaver Dam are often the first to experience the impacts, the first to have to pay the consequences, and the last to receive clear answers. The more I tried to understand it, the more I realized how difficult it can be for ordinary residents to get clear answers when something is changing in their environment. My family and I live on a small horse farm 1.6 miles from the Meta Data Center. What was once living fertile land where I would ride my horse is now $1 billion construction project. What does it feel like when a massive project arrives near your home and nobody can clearly tell you what is happening and who is responsible? What I learned along the way are the same questions I had about our land are the questions that every community should be asking before more projects like this are going to be approved. And you don't want what happened to me to happen to you. Like many people in rural Wisconsin, we rely on the land and water around us every day, and one of the most important features on our property is a natural creek that runs through it. For 47 years, this beautiful creek has flowed through my front yard. It's up to 20 feet wide, up to 4 feet deep, and it has persisted through droughts, floods, and decades of Wisconsin seasons. Until recently, its behavior was completely predictable. It flowed year-round, and it responded normally to rainfall and seasonal change. When construction began upstream on the data center site, something changed. It didn't just run low, it began to stop completely. I went down to do chores in the morning, and my creek was dry, and I made a video about it and put it out on social media. By the end of the day, I had over 400,000 views and comments, most people asking me, "You don't live near a data center, do you?" I didn't think anything of it because it wasn't even up and running yet. Sometimes, hours after the creek was dry, it would come back without rainfall suddenly. It would come back murky and opaque, looking like milk. Other times, it would rush back so quickly, it would begin to cause severe erosion, eating away our shoreline over 60 inches in places and causing trees to fall. This happened over and over and over and over again, all construction season long. So I called the DNR. Wardens came out and visited the site. Water samples were taken. Multiple departments became involved. However, different departments handle different things: stormwater, contamination, permits, mining, waterways, and wetlands. There's not always one person looking at the whole system. I documented everything: the stopping, the starting of the creek, the rainfall, bedrock, quarry pumping records nearby, aquifers, watersheds, groundwater data. The mining geologist at the DNR said the cause was not the quarries, but they didn't really have an answer for me. By the way, there is one geologist in the mining department at the DNR for the entire state of Wisconsin, one human. So to get him on the phone to be able to come out is really, really difficult. I started to compare flow patterns with construction activity up the stream at the data center site. Something was starting to add up, and the pattern became very clear. I had our water tested, and I began to research construction practices in the way that large industrial projects are permitted. But documenting something unusual is one thing. Proving why it's happening is something completely different, and there was no clear path to an answer. At that point, I realized that if I wanted answers, I was going to have to research the science and the policies by myself. I reached out to hydrologists at several universities and other experts for help. Our water testing alone is $120 in postage to send that sample in, and another $389 for the test every single time we have it tested. Researching what is happening on my property has become like my part-time job. And eventually that research led me to share my findings at the Capitol in Madison. Large projects involve hundreds of permits, but there just does not seem to be a system in place to make sure that those permits are being followed. And the agencies that are there to protect us are severely understaffed and underfunded. So it would be often that my water would turn white, and by the time somebody could come out to take a sample, it had gone completely dry, or it had already come back clear. The burden ends up being on the landowner to prove that damage has been done after the fact, and it's against billion-dollar companies. The hydrology report arranged by Meta was relying mainly on geosyntech consultants. Try to follow that flow chart on the right. Meta and geosyntech share the same investor. Some engineering analysis relied on subsurface data from geotechnical firms like Terracon within the Mortensen-led construction project team on the Beaver Dam site. This means much of the information in this report came from sources checking up and working on each other with financial ties to the project itself. Do we really expect a well-funded corporation to make it easy for the evidence to point back to them? Reading these permits, I also found out that one of the hallmarks of the propaganda coming from Meta is that they're going to have a net neutral impact on the wildlife in the wetlands. The permit allows them to mitigate the damage to wetlands by buying credits in other counties, not here on Beaver Dam. Landowners are trying to let everybody know that something is terribly wrong. Townships cannot say no to their land being annexed by the city. And because my home sits outside the Beaver Dam city limits, I am not represented by the city council, even though I now live next to the data center. I would like to ask you to consider something. Would you want a project like this built next to your home? These decisions affect communities for decades. We deserve transparency, careful study, and an honest conversation before these decisions are being made, not after. That data center isn't even up and running yet. And if this can happen before a facility is even operational, it raises some serious questions about what protections exist at all. This is not just about one creek. It's about how communities handle projects that are changing our landscape faster than our system is prepared to understand. The people living closest to these projects don't even get a vote in that decision, but the people in this room do. I've done everything I can to prove and understand what is happening on my land and bring that information forward, because communities deserve to know what questions to even ask before decisions are being made. We all have a role in protecting the places that we call home. Protect yourself, test your water, and record your water pressure now as baseline data. Document everything now. Protect your community by going to council meetings, asking questions, reaching out to your representatives, and ask them not to approve another data center and to enforce strong oversight of this one. The decisions that you're making today are going to shape this community for decades, and we need to do this together.
So I would just like to build on that last thing she just said. In the very beginning, when I started helping at those first community meetings, I told everybody near the construction, make sure you take photos and videos of your property now, because when the time comes, if there is property damage, even then, if you have documentation from, 5 months ago, my place wasn't like this, to now look what happened, even then, if you document, they still try and say, well, you can't prove that it's us that did that. So that's just another one of these, the elements of these projects that's just so maddening They just try and literally get away with anything they can and screw people over however they can, and it's just really not okay. So please keep standing up against this, okay? When you stay home, they win. When we stay silent, they win. We cannot stay silent and just let this happen, okay? For real. Yeah, come on. All right, so I really do, again, thank everybody for being here, especially those of you who are in it for the long haul. Again, you know, we really didn't originally plan for the event to go this long, and we also wanted to have so much more time for Q&A. So please try and not be upset that we didn't really get to that at this event right here. It's just we had so much to cover because this is such a long time coming, and we wanted to make sure that you had all the information with you to empower you to want to stay involved. So again, we're already planning our next citizen town hall. We're already making the lineup, and then we will make sure that there is more time in the future for more question and answer. It's just, this is the first time, and we just wanted to make sure that you had all the information and get everybody together. So now I'm going to bring up Steve. Steve is going to kind of wrap everything up here, and he's one of our founding members of our admin team and has definitely been very instrumental in getting the ball rolling and keeping her moving. So let's give Steve a big hand.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is the biggest project that's ever hit Beaver Dam, the city of, and you know, we did our surveys and most people had never heard of this project, didn't know what a data center was. And we formed this group as a way to educate ourselves and to educate you all. And I gotta tell you, we were organizing our first meeting and I was in Staples printing off some brochures and just some data that we found. And I saw somebody there that I knew and they laughed at me, thinking, you think you're gonna do anything to stop Meta? And my answer was, well, maybe not. Maybe not. I said, maybe we can help some other community to not get bulldozed like we were. And from that little small group that we started in our pizza ranch that first night back in October, it's grown into you all. And I know you all, some came here with questions, some came with concerns. We're gonna try to address those. You heard a lot of the concerns that we have. I live 3/4 of a mile away from the first data center and about 1/2 mile away from the proposed second one. And what do we want? We want transparency. We want something that we weren't afforded. We're trying to be transparent and get information out there and to help you all to have a voice. So we're glad to see that you're here. We want you involved. We see a lot of familiar faces of people that have been showing up at the city council meetings. People from other communities like Christine Lejeune. Some of you may know Christine if you stand up. She was the lady that was dragged out of the Port Washington city council meeting. I don't want to skip over and not recognize some people, but another couple here that has a business that their front yard has been torn up for the last however long. People working out in their yard. Me, my dog going crazy with construction people. It's the little things. It's the people whose land is being threatened to be taken by eminent domain. Not taken, but used to have these power lines run through their backyards, whether they want it or not. They're being told, I want to make sure that I get this right, that they were being told, this is going to happen. So you might as well just accept it. By the people from ATC coming to their land, coming to them, doing appraisals, saying this is going to happen, whether you want it to or not. Now, I don't know, all of us have probably worked hard our whole life. People that are getting their land taken, these power lines run, right through their property, their dream homes, something that they've built, they've sacrificed for. Like, we're just not okay with that. I think we have a legitimate gripe. We formed this group in a lot of ways so that you would get the other side of the story. Because our city council was told a story. They were sold on this idea that it was going to bring a bunch of tax money into our community. And I got to tell you, Charlie said something the other night that hit me like a Mack truck. Now, he was talking about something different, but he said these data centers are coming into weak links, like they're finding weak links. This isn't Meta's first data center. This isn't ATC's first power line that they've run. They know that if you're isolated and you think there's nothing you can do, they've got it. I think the city council, this is my opinion, but I think the city council, they feared that this type of a meeting was going to happen if they were transparent before that contract was signed. That's why we didn't get to hear the other side of the story. We didn't get to find information from other communities and share it into our own community to decide, hey, is this something we really want here? What's the EMF radiation for people living within 2 miles of this data center? We could go on and on and on. There's lists. But we want you to be involved. If you don't want this second data center being built in the city of Beaver Dam, then please contact your city council member. We have a list of all of their phone numbers and email addresses. Just come to the city council meeting and speak up. We've been laughed at. I personally have been laughed at, scoffed at, said I'm one person against 16,000, or there's always the same 5 people showing up. This young lady here waving her hand had a bunch of trees cut down in her yard. I mean, we can do story after story after story of people whose livelihoods, their homes are just being invaded. And you heard some of those stories here today. So transparency, what do we want? You know, how did we get here? We want competent people in government. We want transparent people in government. There are some people that in this room that have stood up to run for a position in our city government because of some of the things that have gone on here. And so I just commend. We need more of that. We need more people showing up. We need an educated public. We have a legitimate gripe. We heard about the back-end infrastructure of what this is bringing to us, the surveillance, the digital ID, the digital currency. One of the things that didn't get talked about is how many jobs AI is going to take from regular old people. A couple of terms to become familiar with is the World Economic Forum and universal basic income that they're predicting because of all the jobs that are going to be taken from AI is taking from people, that we're going to need this universal basic income. I could go on and on, but I'm going to say this. Sometimes it does take being laughed at and scoffed at and standing up, even when it's not popular. But we are winning. We are making a difference. You know, people in DeForest came to us to ask us for help. People have come to Sarah, and she needs a big round of applause. We're helping people all across the state, all across this country. We've been helping other people in other groups that are wondering, hey, what's going on? There's this data center thing. And what can we do? How do we do it? And Christine, their group in Port Washington has been great. We helped DeForest. Prescott coming up and helping us, explaining the TIDs. We're helping one another. This is our country. This is our community. You know, we need to be involved. And And we can't just let them bulldoze us. We can't just let them think we're isolated, that we're alone. And my personal opinion is there is only one piece of legislation at the state level that's needed, and that is a complete pause to the construction of these data centers and the purchasing of land by these data centers in the state of Wisconsin. I just want to say thank you all for coming out. Again, this is our community. Let's get involved. Thanks.